Okay, so today's focus is going to be on helping you figure out ways to potentially earn the sophistication point on the rubric. As you hopefully know, the rubric is broken into three sections. First, thesis. Is there a defensible thesis, yes or no? That's worth 1 point, which I know seems small, but the presence of an actual thesis determines everything else, an actual defensible thesis. And as I have said over and over and over again, just repeating the prompt back to your reader is not a thesis. And your thesis needs to, at least with the poetry and prose essays, needs to be complex, meaning that it needs to answer the prompt in such a way that it shows more than one aspect, more than one way to look at the answer of the prompt. Okay. And the majority of what I've been doing in class so far has kind of been talking about like really basic stuff. And there are so many of you who are doing this so beautifully well that what I want to do today is really focus on the possibility of a sophistication point. Now, I don't want to spend too much time in class dealing with this because in truth, the sophistication point just kind of happens to people more than they can go out and seek it. It happens to people who are really good at both writing and or connecting what they're writing to kind of bigger picture ideas. So for that reason, it's not really something, it's kind of an organic point. It's not something that I can really necessarily teach you into outside of me already kind of guiding you through the process of, okay, how do you think about a poem? How can you, or a prose passage? How can you see varieties of ways to understand it, et cetera, et cetera? Let's talk about the literary devices of the poetic techniques, et cetera, that bring depth to your understanding. Right. And if you learn how to do that very well, I mean, really well, the sophistication point, I don't want to say it will definitely come naturally, but it is more likely to come naturally. But let me actually today address specifically what they're looking for in the sophistication point, okay? So as you can read here, I'll go ahead and be pedantic and read it anyway. Demonstrates sophistication of thought and or develops a complex literary argument. Responses that earn this point may demonstrate a sophistication of thought or develop a complex literary argument by doing any of the following. And now, before you think, oh, but my thesis is complex, and so therefore I will have proven complexity, and therefore I'll get my sophistication point. No, that's complex on kind of a ground floor level. We're talking about complexity in a more intricate, more sophisticated level, and there are different ways to do it. So how do you do it? Identify and exploring complexities or tensions within the poem. Again, that's not just answering the complex thesis and proving the complex thesis. That's really going into depth into the complexity. I'm going to spend time in class talking about that a little bit later. Illuminating the student's interpretation by situating it within a broader context. That's the one that we're really going to talk more about today. And there's just kind of one way I'm going to approach that, or how do you approach that? There are more than one. There's more than one way. Then alternative interpretations, employing a style that's consistently vivid and persuasive. You'll note that at the end it says the point should be awarded only if the sophistication of thought or complex understanding is part of the student's argument, not merely a phrase or a reference. So a lot of times people, this is what I've been saying against the idea that, oh, okay, all I have to do is go through this checklist, and then I can write a good essay. You might be able to write an essay that meets certain requirements, but it's not going to be good. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not going to be good. I'm saying that to write a good essay, you really have to be invested in it, and you really have to be able to think about the text with sophistication of thought and complexity, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea that, oh, okay, all I have to do is use this kind of phrasing or use this word one time or this or that and the other, and then I'll get my sophistication point. No, the majority of you need to mostly be concerned about that evidence and commentary section. That is the meat of the essay. Well, the thesis point, but at this point, if you don't understand what I mean by complex thesis, then you absolutely need to come in and see me. But but the meat of the essay is in that evidence and commentary, the 4 possible points for that, right? And that's what we've been spending most of our time on, because that's the big bulk of the essay. So the sophistication point is kind of low on my list of priorities, because as you have already said, it's either going to come naturally or not. Anyway, so moving on. So we're focusing on illuminating the student's interpretation by situating it within a broader context. And I got this from a website that all the AP lit teachers are looking at and contributing to, and blah, blah, blah. So the writer of this particular article about sophistication point said the broader context are alternative interpretations, which is another point, right? Alternative interpretations, but we'll talk about that later. And vivid and persuasive writing style is part of the student's argument, right? It's not just a one thing. So regarding the broader context, you can't just say things like, since humanity always does such and such, and you address it once and then you think you're done. That's not going to do it, right? And also, it says here random historical references or random references to other things, right? Now, I've said that you can refer to other ideas in the other like historical elements, et cetera, but that's not going to get you the point. It has to be necessarily. It has to fit within the poem, and you always have to concentrate on the text itself, because that is what the essays are about. All right. So, so to that end, I had you write. Hopefully, you did the 3-word theme ideas or core ideas. Now we've touched on this before with Othello. You came up with this 3-word core theme ideas with Othello. I'm having you do it now with some poems with at the Galleria Shopping Mall, and what was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was. Oh, Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. All right. So, but what I thought I'd do is I'd talk about a 3-word theme idea for Nothing Gold Can Stay, which we're all familiar with at this point. So, time destroys beauty, or nature fails perpetuity. Grief grows naturally. Nature draws grief, right? So is there frustration in writing a 3-word summary of the core of the text? Yes, there is. But because you're having to be so precise in those 3 words, you become laser focused. And from those 3 words, because you have to be laser focused with those 3 words, you can then from there you develop a really strong, clear idea, and then you can do some more further writing. Okay. So the idea that I'm going to suggest to you is that one of the ways that you can begin to earn your sophistication point is by bringing in theme. Is this an absolute necessity? No, it is not a necessity. However, for those of you who are up for the challenge, I'd like to see you try it. Today, we're definitely going to practice, though. So what you would end up doing is you would begin your introduction with talking or writing about the general idea of the theme without making reference to the poem itself. So these truths to human experience or human life, right? Or life in general, right? You write 1, 2, maybe 3 sentences. I would not 1, 2 or 3 sentences about that, making sure that what you write is actually relatable to the text, right? That you don't start going off on a completely different tangent, right? And then after you do that 2, 3 sentences of writing about theme, right? Then you write a sentence, something along the lines of name of poem, addresses or confronts or explore or muses on this issue or this truth or this problem or this question, right? And then you give me the thesis, right? And in the thesis, right, you do the same thing that you've always done. You give a complex answer to the prompt. But what then you have to do as well is, or what you can do as well, if you're going to do this, is offer an additional phrasing at the end. So if I did something about nothing gold can stay, I'd say, the complex into the prompt that addresses nature in this way, right? Two complex ways, thus illuminating the idea that nature draws grief, draws humanity into inevitable grief, right? And so then in the body of my essay, I would absolutely first prove the core of my prompt, which is the complex idea. But in the process of doing that, I'd also pull in that theme over and over and over again, so that it's a integral part of my essay. Okay, so that is what we're going to work on today. Thank you.